What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin, and today we're going to be talking about the box office, and of course, the big story of the day is indeed Captain Marvel, and unfortunately, Captain Marvel had a very strong second weekend, not only domestically, but also abroad as well. We're looking at around a 54% drop domestically, which is a very, very good drop when all things are considered, especially since I know that I myself thought that the number would be a much higher than that, which again just gives me a lot of pause and makes me ask a lot of questions because I just know there are so many people out there that have either refused to see this film or have very negative thoughts about this film, and so to me it just means the normies are just so excited for Endgame that they're going to show up for this no matter what. And if that is the case, then what it has also shown is that the MCU has been able, Kevin Feige has been able to guarantee himself a mass audience that will show up in droves to see his films no matter what the story around it might be, no matter what identity politics are being thrown into the film. And that's the reason why I don't think this is similar to a Last Jedi situation, only because I think that there are enough normies out there that aren't really seeing the direction that Marvel is going in. They don't really know the history of Marvel Comics. They don't really know the direction that they're trying to push, or at least seemingly trying to push with movies like Captain Marvel, and so therefore they are remaining pretty much oblivious to all of this and will continue to show up to these films. So based on the projections that we have right now, as you all like to know, and as you guys know very clearly, whenever you have the second weekend, that is normally when you're able to start predicting what the actual overall total for the film is going to be. Normally speaking, films make around 60% of their entire total within the first 2 weeks. If we take that 60% number, and I did some maths for everyone so that way you didn't have to do it at home, so if this indeed comes out to be 60%, if $760 million, as you can see up there, turns out to be the 6% of its entire worldwide gross, what you're looking at is an end total of $1.26 billion, which again is just insane to me that this film of all films is going to cross the $1 billion mark. If, however, we see it making even less down the run in the next few weeks, which at this point just does not seem likely. If you see this film only making 30% left, if this ends up being 70% of its entire total, at that point it would make still $1.08 billion. And if it is indeed 50% of the total, again, that would be very unlikely, but hey, who knows at this point, right? Then it would make $1.52 billion. So a safe estimate then, just based off of those standards, would be a $1.2 to $1.5 billion total gross, which is just absolutely insane when you think about it. And I don't think anyone, including the people who were cheerleading this film, thought that the movie would be doing nearly this well, not just cracking the $1 billion mark, but doing so even just overall totals just absolutely insane. Now, is there a chance that the film doesn't make the $1 billion mark? Very, very rare chance, and that's if this is only 80% of the entire gross, which most of the time for these big budget films, it's not going to be that high. It's going to be closer to between 50 and 60% of the entirety of what it makes in the overall run. And if it is the case that it's 80% though, that's the only time you would see it drop underneath that, and at that point it would still be at $950 million. So end story is, this film is indeed a financial success, but as we all know, being financially successful does not mean that you are necessarily a good film. There are plenty of films in history that have made money and have been garbage tier films, including several films that came out in March. Beauty and the Beast being a great example of that. Also, of course, Alice in Wonderland being a great example of that. Both films cracking the $1 billion mark in March and yet not being good movies. As we all know, those of us with sense and with brains, money that you make does not equal success necessarily with audiences. Just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean that you made a good movie, and I still stand by the fact that Captain Marvel is a C- movie because it brought in a B- character that honestly at this point is just getting shoehorned in, and I think that they are lucky that at this point Kevin Feige is lucky that the Russos are the ones handling the Endgame movie, because if it wasn't the Russos, if it was someone else, if it was like, for example, these two idiots that directed Captain Marvel, oh my god, like there would absolutely be a collapse, because this to me is almost similar, very much similar to the Last Jedi, numbers. The reason why I just don't see it being the exact same, because I know a lot of people are going to try and say, oh man, so you're saying it could be making 1.3 or close to 1.3 billion? That's exactly what The Last Jedi made. The Last Jedi also had a gigantic drop-off in week 1 to week 2, made significantly more money in its first couple weeks than Captain Marvel did, and also, too, was able to lay waste to the Star Wars fandom. The MCU is not seeing that similar thing happen. The reason why, and I've covered this in previous accounts on live streams and on other discussions, where basically what you're seeing is the MCU is showing, and Kevin Feige is showing, that the MCU has become its own entity. It does not need the comic book fans anymore. It does not meet the hardcore fans anymore. So that's something that Star Wars was never able to do, because Star Wars, Disney Star Wars, that is, try to get people on board, try to create a new audience with The Force Awakens, was able to get most people on board, get some new people in, but then by the time The Last Jedi came around, then at that point, almost, a giant chunk of the people, of the original fans, were like, okay, nope, hardcore fans, big chunk of them said, okay, nope, we're done, and they have not been able to hold on to and really build a coalition of people to go support the movie, and we know that just because of Solo: A Star Wars Story. If they had built enough people who loved Star Wars and new fans of Star Wars, then they would have showed up to see that movie. That movie, they made only $396 million, and so that is proof positive that there is indeed something broken in the fandom menace. Now, does that mean that we're going to see something similar to Episode 9? I doubt it's going to be that low, but I honestly think that we're going to see a much different story come around with Star Wars than with the MCU. All the people, including Scott Mendelson and all the shows out there, are going to try and say, see, this shows you that, it's the same thing works in Star Wars, and that Solo, it is exactly how we said it was. It has nothing to do with the fans. No, you're dealing with two very different fandoms. The Star Wars fandom was broken, did not build a new coalition of fans to be able to support the film, which is why Solo lost money. The MCU has had 10 years to build a coalition of fans, has released around 2 films every single year for that 10-year period, has been building fans, growing its audiences, growing its holds, and that's the reason why even a movie like this, that is objectively speaking bad to mediocre, is going to make over $1 billion at the box office, is because they've been able to build up that much good grace. People forget that Endgame, or rather that Infinity War, again, made over $2 billion, was the most financially successful film of last year, and also was the movie of the year, which was why it boggles my mind that that one didn't get an Oscar nomination, but somehow Black Panther did. But you look at that and you understand to yourself, very clearly that they're going to take this, and all the shills are going to take this as saying, this proves that Brie Larson is box office gold. No, it proves that the MCU knows what they're doing. It proves that Kevin Feige knows his audience and knows that he can put out almost anything at this point and be guaranteed success. It's going to be a lot longer and take a lot harder to be a lot more difficult for the MCU fan base to disappear, because they've just been able to build it up so much with so many normies, as Gary of Nerdratic always says, and it's a true statement. There are so many normies now, and this proves it. Okay? The fact that this is going to be a guaranteed billion-dollar film by the end of its run shows you that the normies will go out and show up for anything. They will remain ignorant of all the stuff going on behind the scenes. They will remain ignorant of the comic history, and they will just go ahead and take it and say, yes, sir, please give me another. Yes, sir, please give me another. And that's pretty much what they're doing at this point. So, again, some of you might say, oh, you're just being salty, you're just being upset. He's like, no, hey guys, I was wrong in my original estimates. I honestly thought and failed to realize. I thought that we were having ourselves another Star Wars moment. I thought that we were having another Phantom Menace moment. However, what I failed to realize, and the reason why I'm now in retrospect, as you say, Captain Hindsight, 100% accurate, is I did not for a second think about the differences in the fandom and also the length of time in building those fandoms. So you had, for example, in Star Wars, you had 30 years of people being brought up in the George Lucas era of Star Wars and being of that fandom. You only had a few years of the new Disney era Kathleen Kennedy run Star Wars. And it, by doing so, alienated the original audience that had been so dedicated for so long. And when you lost them, and you thought, oh, we're going to be getting new people to replace them, so it'll be fine. But those new people did not come in droves, and not enough period of time walked by. You did not make enough movies to be able to build that interest over time. You saw a tremendous drop-off with The Last Jedi into Solo. MCU, as I said, 10 years, multiple films, billions upon billions. I think it's now at $18 billion worldwide. We're looking at the MCU, all the MCU films accounting for almost $20 billion of just total box office receipts. Obviously, they don't get all of that, but still, even if you take this to 60% of that, you've seen $10 billion or so in net profit, in net gain from the MCU movies. And that is something that Star Wars has not been able to do, and that's why this is not going to be the same thing as Star Wars. So I'm going to tell right now to the John Campions out there that are going to, and the Scott Mendelsons that are going to try and run with this and try and say, haha, this shows you that the trolls don't do anything. No, what this shows you is that the MCU is filled with enough normies out there to fill in a crap ton of theaters, and that's the reason why it's doing well. There's not a conspiracy going on of Disney buying seats. You do not get to the $1.3 billion range by doing that. I'm sorry, like until you show me some actual receipts of that happening and some actual proof other than some pictures, you're not going to convince me of that otherwise. We have two very different fandoms, and that's what the big story is going on here. So as you can see, Captain Marvel domestically did indeed make $69.3 million according to estimates, which is a 54.8% drop, which is a very, very healthy drop within the MCU. Definitely not anywhere near the highest drop from week 1 to week 2. And even though this drop will indeed be bigger next week because we finally have actual competition coming out with, for example, Us being a big release, and I think Us might actually have a chance of being the #1 movie of next week, because if this drops another 60% next week, 70%, we could see Us take over that mark. I think Us is going to do very well at the box office, so we could see this in the #2 slot. It's still going to keep on making money domestically overall. Again, as I said before, $760 million is the current estimate of it. We have domestic total of $266 million. This will definitely pass $300 million by the end of its run, probably getting close to $350, maybe even $400 million domestically. Foreign market, it's going to cross $500 million this week and is likely to end up close to $600 million, which again is just absolutely freaking insane. Nothing so far coming out of the foreign market as far as what the actual breakdown was for the weekend, so I cannot say whether or not the drop-off was huge in China or anywhere else. We're expecting at least a 70% drop-off in China, though, so China is definitely by no means loving this movie. This film will probably only get a standard run in China, unlike other films like Alita, which were able to have legs, stay strong, and get an extension. It probably won't get an extension in China, but it also doesn't really need an extension in China because it's making enough money in other parts of the world. Again, when you take into account that only $88 million of the $303 million is from China, they're obviously making enough everywhere else to make up for all of that. We do have some other releases coming out this week. Wonder Park, which I have not seen a trailer yet for, even though I posted one on my own website. Not seen this trailer. This made $20.3 million, so good for it. I'm sure it'll break even at some point. Came out on a really bad weekend to try and go up against this juggernaut that has been Captain Marvel. And then another one of these love teen romance stories, 5 Feet Apart, which opened up in a very limited number of theaters and made $13 million. Who knows? And who really cares at this point? A movie that I know a lot of people do care about is Alita Battle Angel, so this is indeed the most accurate total. At this point, worldwide, we're looking at $394 million. So just based on this and based off of the trends domestically, it's probably going to drop out of even more theaters by next weekend. Foreign market going to drop out by, of even more theaters by next weekend as well. And what we're probably going to end up seeing is we're going to end up seeing a very clear cash revenue still coming out of China, since it did get an extension including an IMAX release in China. So this film is going to cross the $400 million mark by the end of its run, but most of that's going to be coming from the foreign markets. Again, $81 million. You're looking at a top off of between $85 and $90 million at best for the domestic total. It's really sad that Alita Battle Angel really got screwed over by the domestic market, but unfortunately, you can't change audiences anyway. But anyway, guys, what are y'all's thoughts about all of this? Do you think that Alita is going to make even more? Again, the break-even number for Alita was around $430 million, and so we are definitely going to see this film not make it to that point. But keep in mind too that Blu-ray sales, DVD sales, buying it on digital, having it be put on streaming services like Hulu or Netflix, etc. These are all ways in which they're able to gain extra cash. So this film, even though it might be in the red at the box office, will make up its money. So the studio will be able to pay off its rent essentially, or pay off its tickets for the amount of money they spent on this film at some point, just not when it's in theaters. Captain Marvel, as we were talking about on the live stream the other day, $750 million was the number that that Jeremy thought was the number insinuated by Deadline. However, in all likelihood, we're looking at a closer to $500 million to $520 million break-even number. This film has obviously gone past that tremendously. This film is very, very profitable, and by the end of its run, as I said, you're looking at a $1.2 to maybe $1.5 billion end run, which would have this film be very, very high up in the entire MCU. Just as a frame of reference, just looking at the overall worldwide totals, that would put it past Iron Man 3 potentially. So basically, this is going to end up most likely in the top 5 unadjusted worldwide totals, which, as I said, is absolutely insane to me that this film is doing that well when it's such a mediocre to bad film. as I said in my review, I gave it a C-. I think that's a very fair score. Right now, I actually, for those that don't know, I do have a website, and it is ombreviews.home.blog, so go ahead and check it out for yourself. You can look at movies that are out right now that are going to be coming out soon, and you can basically put thumbs up, thumbs down on certain movies. You can rate out of 5 as well. But also, I'm slowly starting to do something called Objom, and it is a working title for a new way of reviewing films. There are 3 films you can review right now: Alita, Aquaman, and Captain Marvel. This is a new way of reviewing because it allows for a more objective standard, because you are rating it based off certain categories, and it's supposed to be done honestly by people who have seen the movies and basically breaking things down, saying this is how I feel about this aspect of the film, this aspect was weak, this aspect was strong, and you'll see it for yourself when it actually pops up. But currently the Objom scores are Alita Battle Angel at 87.61%, very well liked, very solid film in every single way. Aquaman at a 75.66%, which makes sense. Yes, it's a fun, awesome movie, but technically speaking, there are a couple of issues. And Captain Marvel at a 60.1%, which again, I think is fair because it's a mediocre film. It's a middle-of-the-road film. I would say it's definitely a rotten film just because objectively I think it's very, very flawed. But anyway, it is indeed making money. It's going to make $1 billion, and I think that's a sad thing because movies that make that much money, I think, should be good. And I say that not just for movies like Captain Marvel, but also for other movies, for example, like Alice in Wonderland and other films that really just don't deserve that kind of money, like Beauty and the Beast too. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, please let me know, do you think this is going to impact your own thoughts on Endgame? Do you want to go see Endgame? I know that based off the trailer we got, I'm pretty excited for it. I personally think Endgame is going to be great, but we shall indeed see. Have a wonderful day, guys, and as always, God bless.